Pecha Kucha 49 Afterworld. So a good friend of mine, Certain Streaks, introduced me to this a long time ago, and I watched a few episodes. It's a 3 minute per episode long web series. I couldn't find all the episodes until he sent me a link recently that had the whole thing. So I've watched it, and I think it's worth talking about at length. So what is Afterworld? It's a story of a man who wakes up in a world where everyone has vanished. 3 minutes per episode. It covers a great many kind of science fiction tropes. The main character narrates as he goes along in the past tense. His name is Russell Schumacher. He's a design agency guy. He takes a business trip across the country, and when he wakes up the following day, all of the electricity is off, and all of the people seem to have vanished. So it uses the whole iconic thing of New York traffic is silent. The only thing he can hear are birds chirping. So obviously something is super duper uber wrong. There are a lot of narrative threads that Afterworld goes through. The first one is like what happened to the electricity. He finds that like power cords and stuff have like fried overnight. So he's from the very start. That's something he tries to figure out. A few episodes later, what happened to the people? He starts to get a little bit of kind of evidence to support some theories for that. So he can eventually draw conclusions as to what happened to the people. It's kind of linked to what happened to the electricity, but maybe not the way you'd think. The overarching the ultimate goal is for Russell to get home to his family. He has to travel across the greater part of America to return to his family and see if they've survived. Because it turns out there are a handful of survivors, but the majority of the human race seems to have just vanished. There's also a conspiracy theory in there. Who are the people behind the things that resulted in the fall, as it's referred to, with people vanishing and electricity dying. And he also resolves this conclusively. Every 3 minute episode tends to end on a bit of a cliffhanger. One of the early ones is this idea he in the first episode he thinks he's the only person alive. At the end of the second episode he finds a lit cigarette in the street, and obviously he's like, well, now I have to figure out where this came from. Someone else is out there. The way the show is produced is predominantly using kind of cost-saving things like Ken Burns effects, where you slide over a still image, and maybe they use a separate layer for different images to put on top of a still image. That's the majority of the way the majority of the shots are shot, but there are also fully animated 3D character models that are used very sparingly. Like in this scene, like Russell is blinking as the camera zooms out, and his head is moving, so it is actually a fully 3D character model. But it's the combination of the two plus the audio that push you forward. At the start of every episode, for no more than 5 seconds, the main character keeps a journal, and you see the pictures he draws in his journal. It's kind of funny. Every single episode has a different image, and it's almost like wasted effort because people barely get to see it. And some of those pictures are pretty good, and they're all interesting because they're about what he's talking about. One of the themes that's kind of touched on is like what happens in a world where science no longer applies. Do we all go back to like faith? Does religion become stronger? Does everyone become Amish in some sense? Or do we continue as we are now? Is capitalism still at the heart of what we do? Is supply and demand how we're going to run things? There's like a new mafia replacing any semblance of governance. These issues are touched on; they're not necessarily dwelled on. There is a air of fantasticality to some of these things. In one episode, Russell goes to sleep and wakes up as a black guy on the other side of the planet in Africa, and he has to resolve that guy's problems to get back into his body. At the same time, the black guy's in his body resolving his problems. It doesn't seem forced because it's the progression, the natural progression of the show to that point. But every once in a while, some of the conflict does feel forced. Like babies being born is normal after the fall, but there's this one instance where it isn't, and it's kind of manufactured drama for 4 episodes just because things have to keep moving. So Brent Friedman, uh, one of the creators of this, talks about effectively, even though it uses all these kind of techniques to save money, the whole thing, the first season still cost $3 million. So maybe I won't be doing this myself. Because each episode is so short, you can actually use the narrative as an advertisement in front of another video. Something I've seen that's kind of similar recently is like text message stories, where there's like a stalker in the house and someone's texting someone else in real time. It's interesting, something to think about. And the reason I've devoted a whole week to this is because the show is a lot like Skittles. I dare you to try and consume just one. It's very difficult, borderline impossible. So what you have here is something that just keeps propelling you forward to consume more of the content, and that's an incredibly valuable business model. So, quote of the week: where is my fucking PC? I ordered this thing, I think it's been 3 weeks ago now, and it needs to show up so I can start putting real YouTube content out. I'll be slow to do it anyway because I'm a lazy ass, but I really don't want the excuse of saying I don't have a machine that can handle it. So that brings us to the end of Pecha Kucha 49. I will leave a link to Afterworld episode 1 in the description. You should check it out. And if you can only watch one episode and then stop, please give me a comment. I won't believe you, but See you next time.